I've got seas going right across my deck here now. I did not run up in his vicinity, but no, I didn't. So this is Goose 2. Roger. Thanks for that information, sir, and I'll get back to you if we come up with anything. Over.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of We Always Lie to Breakers. This episode of We Always Break a Stranger.
That's it.
The Beyond the Strangers podcast.
Oh, that's also good.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Beyond the Breakers, podcast about shipwrecks, loss, and lessons learned from maritime disasters. My name's Tanner. I will be joined by Taylor and a bunch of other people because we have some special guests here that we will introduce shortly. Before that, we do have a new patron to thank, so big thank you to Mel. Really appreciate your support. We hope you enjoy what you find over there on Patreon. So with that, let's bring in our multiple guests. We are honored to be joined here today by We Always Lie to Strangers. How is it going today, guys?
Really good.
Going great. Well. We all got to survive a tornado yesterday, so never been better.
Yeah. Yep.
I was following along with that because I know you had messaged about that. So very, very good. I was just mainly hoping it didn't interrupt our podcasting, more than anything else.
The important thing.
Well, I didn't want to be rude if we had to cancel.
Live from my laundry room.
Yeah, we'd be fairly understanding of that. Let's see here. So we have our media check-in that we normally do, but I guess before we get into that, do you guys just want to introduce a little bit about yourselves and who you are and what it is that you do on We Always Lie to Strangers?
Take it from the top, Sharp.
We, as the podcast quarterback, as sports guys,
and Gus,
we're just we're a classic men talking with their friends about history podcast. I think the most popular genre of podcasting is buddies having fun talking about history. And, we're really glad to be on this show because just like y'all, we have been called superbly researched and also too woke. Mm-hmm. So it really is a flyover country match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we're Ozarks history. I didn't mention that. The Ozarks being the region, southern Missouri, northern Arkansas. That's our primary focus.
That's definitely not something that a lot of podcasts cover. I think that's one of the cool things about your podcast is covering these bits of, folklore and history that, 98% of the stuff you talk about is stuff I've never heard of before. So that's awesome.
And we're trying to keep that going. I've been actually a little upset with things that we've covered that locals don't know about.
I have particularly enjoyed the Yoakum coins. Is that what they're called? Yoakum coins?
I actually think
I like those.
People would prefer Yoakum dollars, but I've always called it coins. I
liked the Tut Everett War. I mean, I've liked all the episodes, but those are some of my favorites. I liked the one about the I forget the name of the town, but with the town with all the widows.
Oh, Seneca.
Yes, that one. Those have been some of my personal favorites.
I think the first one I listened to, and one of my favorites is the Hornet Spooklight. I definitely enjoyed that one as well.
Was that one of our first live recorded ones too?
That was our second recording together in a room. Those get pretty loose. No, those were our third.
Listen, you haven't lived until you've tried to see the Hornet Spooklight and instead just talk to weird drunk locals.
I have to mention, because I'm not going to lie and say I've listened to every Beyond the Breakers episode, but I have gone back and listened to older ones.
Son of a bitch!
And it's a real shame that we hadn't started our podcast when you did the duck boats on Table Rock.
Absolutely.
Because we're all very familiar with Ride the Ducks.
Yes.
I've ridden the duck.
I have as well.
Just not into the abyss like some other unfortunate folks.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
That was a fun episode because it was one of our earlier ones where it was, I feel like kind of being like, oh, could we cover this? It's not like a shipwreck, but But yeah, that was a really fun one to cover.
It floats like a duck.
It doesn't is the problem.
We can
Yeah.
move past that. We can edit that one in post production. Also, I feel like we should say our names. I'm Raymond Mathis. Sharp, I think, said his name.
I'm Daniel Smiley.
I'm Gus Carlson.
Oh God, I said mine, or someone said my name. I'm Sharp Woolston.
I'm so used to going in our natural podcast order, so then when Ray takes charge, I got very confused.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, and we also haven't recorded in a bit because we're trying to build up some scripts and all that.
That sounds nice. Building up scripts sounds really nice, but I don't think we've ever planned more than like 2 episodes ahead.
No, I feel like we do it like the way they used to do South Park, like put it together in a week.
The permanent urgency.
Basically, this one does feel like a bit of a throwback because this is the first one in a long time that I've done largely from an NTSB report.
Nice.
Nice.
Love a good NTSB report.
Yeah, like there's a certain comfort of kind of going back into it, you know, the writing style. It is much faster to assemble an episode from an NTSB report because it's more or less laid out like a long, boring podcast episode script.
Yeah, not a lot of fluff to cut out.
But at the same time, so I'll take credit. I sent this to Tanner or maybe to the Beyond the Breakers podcast Instagram. I don't remember which one I did. But this episode,
Either way, it's probably me you were talking to.
Most likely.
but I had I think I was using our podcast account as well. But this was on our short list for episodes. And then I sent it to y'all because, you know, it's in your wheelhouse, or should I say it's in your lifeboat or whatever you would say for that. But
We have a wheelhouse. We have a wheelhouse here too.
we have wheelhouses here.
Wheelhouse
Great.
works.
yeah, it's in your wheelhouse. And
Might even be more accurate.
if we did this, it would not be done as well. I'll tell you that much.
Scrolling back through to the some of the original messages, Sharp, I was very confused when you were asking about William Clark earlier,
Oh yeah.
and now I see why. Now I have clicked on this screenshot from something, and I know what you're referring to related to this story.
I told the boys that I have a surprise because we can say it now. We're going to close this episode off with a waltz episode in an episode of Beyond the Breakers. Just so you know, it'll be and it seems like only Tanner and I know what it's about.
Yeah, and even today I was like, what does William Clark have to do with this?
It's an Indian agent that comes up in many episodes of We Always Lie to Strangers.
But I totally remember seeing that now. So I guess
You're not ready for it.
So we can faster get to that surprise twist at the end. I guess we should get started first. This episode will take us somewhere that we have never been on the show. It will take us to Oklahoma. More specifically, I guess if we're talking like closest municipality, we're talking Webbers Falls, Oklahoma. Don't know a ton about Webbers Falls outside of what I have picked up in the process of researching this and watching some local news coverage from 2002. I did see that it had a 2020 population of 338 and that it was, this is all according to Wikipedia, the headquarters/retirement location of Stan Wadey, who I know has come up a few times on We Always Lie to Strangers.
Yeah, she stand on my weighty till I secede.
And you said it right. You said weighty. That was good.
Oh, I'm very familiar with Stan Wadey because
Look at this research.
Actually, no, this is a longer term thing because in 5th grade when we were doing our Civil War unit,
You read it? You read Rifles for Wadey?
I read Rifles for Wadey. I read
Hell yeah.
And I read that because I was like the top reader in my 5th grade class. I don't know.
Yeah, you were.
And so
I feel like that just is required to be a podcaster at this
all
point.
of
I was gonna say we've been history nerds our whole lives. Shocker.
all of the other kids were reading like I think the lowest level was reading like a Dear America book or something.
The normal children.
And the
well-adjusted
troglodytes were reading the Dear Americas. One group was reading I think it was called Across 5 Aprils, and then I was the only student in class who got to read Rifles for Wadey. So yes, I read that in like 5th grade, and that's where I like first learned about Stan Wadey. And then I thought he was an interesting figure because he's like, you know, he's like the last Confederate general to surrender. And then like as a kid, you think that's cool because like we came from like a Southern family, so it's like the Confederacy is like the cool, the rebels. And then you grow up and you learn about the Confederacy.
Yeah, and a whole different what was I going to say? Tone on it.
This isn't about states' rights at all.
Yeah.
What state right? What was the rights they cared about?
I made a joke about people calling both of our podcasts too woke, but I'm currently reading a book for our podcast about the one Arkansan that voted against secession, and the Civil War. Bringing up that it's about slavery really upsets people. But what I was going to say is that Ray and I, in anticipation of recording this episode, went to Weber's Falls.
Yeah, we did.
To feel out what the town was like, and not a lot there.
I think you sent us some pictures, right, to our email?
I sent a handful of pictures to y'all. I took a picture of the memorial.
They had the flags from Stan Wade's unit. Really cool flag, right? Mm-hmm. Fighting for a bad cause, but pretty badass flag.
Well, we were just.
Did you go to the Burger Barn by chance?
We didn't see the Burger Barn.
Yeah, I don't know how we missed it.
It's right by the National Trail of Tears Association.
I don't remember seeing that either. We did go to the Weber's Falls.
What a cursed little
museum. Town. There's something about small towns in the South. I'm sure it's like this across the country, but southern ghost towns,
Oklahoma's in the South now.
Southern rural towns have a tendency to feel like towns that survived a zombie outbreak in the past.
Oh yeah, North Carolina's got plenty of them.
Yeah, I believe that.
I guess on the topic of Stand Wadey, so Weber's Falls, this whole area, that's part of the Cherokee Nation reservation, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like all the signs there are like the street signs are also in Cherokee, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and there's an election for the Cherokee Tribal Council going on right now. So all of the election signs that we saw were for Cherokee tribal elections, which was also neat because only really get to see that in Oklahoma to that extent.
So that's our setting for today. The main character of today's episode is not Stan Wadey. It is the towboat Robert Y. Love, a standard diesel-powered twin-screw inland river towboat. She was steel-hulled, 104 feet long, with a 30-foot beam and an operating draft of 7 feet 9 inches. At the time of her construction in 1955, she'd been named the Caroline by her original owners, the Canal Barge Company. On being sold to Magnolia Marine Transport, MMT going forward here, in 1991, she was renamed Robert Y. Love. At the time of the report's publication, MMT operated 16 towboats and about 60 barges with a total of 220 employees, most of whom worked on the vessels themselves.
So I'm thinking here, like we've done quite a few river accidents. Have we done a lot with this kind of thing? I know we did the one in Pittsburgh in like 2004, but we really haven't touched on like modern towboat and barge operations too much.
Yeah, I think I think that's the only time we've really talked about these.
I think that was the Elizabeth M, I think was the name of that one.
I also like how this boat's name is like a philosophical question.
Yeah, I was thinking that. It's like it's trying to develop sentience.
Why love?
And I'm assuming, since it's called Magnolia Marine Transport, it's got to be a Mississippi company, right?
That would make sense, I guess.
Chip and Joanna Gaines own this company, actually.
She starts her trip here in Alabama, but the company itself very easily could be from there. Let's see. The Robert Y. Love did have one feature that I'm not sure we've seen before on an episode. And this is a variable height or retractable wheelhouse that can be raised or lowered as conditions dictated.
That's fun.
So we could have used that earlier this week.
Nailed it.
I think it is fairly common on these towboats just because, the navigating the rivers, is such a challenge in terms of, what you've got in front of you. So having a little bit higher vantage point probably helps.
I imagine with like how much the water level fluctuates in these rivers, the Ohio's been super high the last few weeks, that there probably are some bridges where that would be useful.
Yeah, I didn't even, that part of it didn't even cross my mind.
At its fully lowered position, the top of the wheelhouse was 17.5 feet above the waterline with a maximum eye height of 16 feet. And when fully raised, the maximum eye height in the wheelhouse was 29.5 feet.
That's significant.
It's not a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's when it's fully erect.
None of that matters for our episode here at all, because it's not going to play a role whatsoever.
Is the water high, or are you just happy to see me?
Let's see. The Robert Y. Love's most recent annual dry docking was in March of 2002, so about 2 months prior to this accident. Also, that doesn't really matter. That's not at all why this accident happens. It's not a maintenance problem. So, of course, with the towboat, we're dealing not just with the vessel itself, but also with barges. 2 of them in this case. These barges are designated with the relatively unexciting names of MM60 and MM62.
Those are firecrackers.
Maybe they did pronounce them 60 and 62.
We're definitely coming in with all the landlocked references.
I wish there was an 69 involved in this.
Oh, it has to exist.
That's a barge that you can push both ways.
To answer the question, why love? You know,
Actually, you said it must exist. It might not, because just given our very small sample size, they only use even numbers. So maybe not. Maybe there is no 69.
Well, they outsmarted me on that one. And they skipped 13. So, yeah, like 2 wins for them, I guess.
These barges were probably built in, I don't know, like the 70s or 80s. So it's like that's before 69 was even a thing. So it was before it was invented.
Before they invented it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was it invented?
Before they came up with it.
well, before the 70s.
1346, probably. See, these were double-hulled barges with identical measurements of 297.5 feet long by 54 feet wide, an empty draft of 1 foot, and a maximum loaded draft of 11.5 feet. The barges are about 3 times the length of the towboat. It's like on paper, it's like you can see the measurements. Really, I didn't have a good conception of this until I was watching the local news coverage of it that actually showed it, rammed into, well, I don't want to give it away what happens here. But when I actually saw the full sort of like construct of the towboat and the barges, they're quite large compared to the boat.
And they're just in like a train, a boat train.
In this
That's
case,
the term, right?
What is a barge but a boat train?
A boat train.
One of them river trains.
Is it just those 2 units, or are there more? Like, like when you see them going down the Mississippi or the Ohio or something, they'll have, pairs of multiple.
This is a side-by-side boat train. They're next to each other.
They're
not
holding hands.
They're not stacked.
They're red rovering.
Let's see. Each barge consisted of 8 cargo tanks, aligned in a 4 port and 4 starboard setup. They're certified to carry 25,800 barrels of cargo, grades A through E. MMT mostly transported oil and asphalt in their barges, but at the time of the accident, the Robert Y. Love's asphalt barges were empty. The Robert Y. Love operated with a crew of 6, which included the captain, a pilot, and 4 additional crew. Those 4 other crew consisted of 2 mates, a chief engineer, and a deckhand. Both the captain and pilot held Coast Guard licenses as required by law. That's pretty standard from what we've seen on these things. You need at least 2 people who are certified to actually operate this thing.
What's the difference between a captain and a pilot?
In most cases that we've seen, essentially seniority.
Okay.
Oftentimes the training and qualifications are the same. It is often just a matter of one of them is older, one of them has been with the company longer.
The other thing you'll see with like the term pilot is someone who does something very specific, like a lot of the harbor pilots and things like that,
right.
They'll get on board like 5 miles offshore and take the ship through like a New York harbor or Boston or somewhere like that. And I would assume there might even be sections of the river, if they're doing a lot of locking and stuff like that, that you might have a pilot on board to help with some of that.
So something almost more specialized in the...
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like one guy that sails really good in one place.
Yeah, right.
That's also kind of a bad boy.
He's the closer, basically. Like when
That's right.
He's got his music as he comes in and everything.
Oh, that's great.
He's the Rob Dibble of the Arkansas River. It's like he can get it through this lock faster than anybody.
But he might do coke.
Oh, definitely.
I've heard, and you guys, because you guys know a hell of a lot more about this stuff, but I've heard that like working on these barges absolutely sucks. Like terrible
It
pay.
doesn't look fun.
Well, we're gonna talk about the hours in a little bit here, and it sounds
Okay.
really awful. Like in terms
Yeah.
of establishing a schedule.
There was a guy on TikTok that was doing this stuff, and like, I don't know, it probably violating all sorts of safety rules to take these TikToks and show us what it's like. But yeah, like, didn't look great.
There was a time when I was unemployed in 2021, and I was like, the Arkansas River is real close. They advertise this job, and then you look into it, and it's like, no, terrible idea.
Well, like, on top of all the normal issues too, like, you're in the middle of a swamp essentially, so like you're just getting eaten alive by bugs and everything. On top of, like, you don't have to deal with
Think
that.
about the catfishing. I bet you're catching tons of blue cats, right? That'd be fun.
So Taylor, I just want to go back to this. Are you on Barge Talk?
I've made it amongst many other things. Yes. I this is something I was telling my wife the other day. I cannot wait until the first NTSB report comes out that like someone doing a TikTok wasn't why it happened, but they were making one, and it's like a factual thing that has to be discussed. It's gonna happen.
It's in the conclusions portion of the NTSB.
May I completely derail all of this for one quick second?
Absolutely.
Since we are recording the week of that Mexican Navy ship hitting the Brooklyn Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought of that because I've seen a lot of TikToks that were happening in the vicinity of that boat hitting the bridge. Anyway.
I saw the one of the girls, she's like posing next to it like as it's hitting the bridge. And people are like, how could she just keep taking this TikTok? It's like, what do you want her to do about it? She's
Right.
I think that ship has literally sailed at this point.
If she's still dancing, I have some issues with that.
She doesn't know it's not part of the show. Let's see here. We got the crew. The captain was 60 years old, having worked on the Mississippi River network for about 40 years, according to the NTSB report.
He has seen some things.
A lot of the same things, too.
That's true.
Here's Cairo, Illinois.
For all of these, I'm just referring to people by their position on board. The names are available. They're mentioned in some of the news reports, but I'm just going off of the NTSB report. He received his first license to operate uninspected towing vessels in 1973, and he had been with Magnolia Marine since 1991. With MMT, he worked as a pilot, a relief captain, and as a captain. And he had been on the Robert Y. Love for a little over a year. At the time of this accident, the captain was licensed as an operator of uninspected towing vessels upon the Great Lakes and inland waters with a Radar Observer Unlimited endorsement.
I do believe that's all one endorsement, right?
I think so.
Like, not to bust his balls too much, but
I think you only get one medal.
When it says captain as a license and operator of uninspected towing vessels, is that a legal thing or is he doing illegal thing?
No, it's illegal. It's like under a certain size, like under a certain displacement.
I think it has to do with how many crew work on there as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the reason why the duck boats can get away with one old dude and one like 18-year-old kid being the entire crew.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
I feel like the Great Lakes are just so different from other inland waters. It seems like those should be separated.
Separate qualifications for these.
Yeah.
They are different.
Like, I just can't imagine floating down the Ohio and then being like, yeah, this guy can take me across Lake Michigan. This will be fine.
Well, that's basically what we talked about in that one, Taylor, that you did, that one barge hopping from like Chicago to like basically over to Gary. I forget what the name of it was, but it was kind of that. It was like, why would you ever want to take this out onto the lake?
I think it was the material service.
That's it, the material service.
But yeah, it would just go from like Chicago and like down to Gary and all the hellscape that is.
We talked a bit about life on board one of these. The daily schedule on the Robert Y. Love, like on many other towboats, was a 6-on, 6-off system. With the captain on duty for the 6 a.m. to noon watch, and the 6 p.m. to midnight watch. So you're 6 hours on, 6 hours off, basically ad infinitum, which I could probably do for a couple days, but that just doesn't seem like you're getting your full rest sequence that you need.
Also, not to mention that, like, if something's a problem and you're resting, it could still be your problem potentially.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, correct. So the captain, he worked a schedule of 30 days on and 15 days off. That sounds pretty nice. I could do that. I could do
The 15 days off would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 30 days doing that 6-6 though.
Yeah, like that would be like by the end of that, you'd be. I feel like you'd spend your first of those 15 days like just like dead.
Yeah, and you can't go back. You know, you're like, hey, honey, I'm back from my month being away. I need to keep my 6-6 schedule. So
Your wife's all mad because she's like, you've been consorting with those Tulsa riverboat whores, haven't you?
Like, yeah,
No,
honey,
we
you
have
got the
that.
midnight to 6 a.m. watch. Get going.
The pirate port of Catoosa, Oklahoma.
I went to Tulsa this weekend, and I saw the port of Catoosa.
The river horse?
I did not see any river horse, but I bet they were around. It's pretty close to that casino.
They're underwater.
Actually, that came up. It's like because that's their ultimate destination here. I was unfamiliar with the term Tulsa ports until doing this, and like that is the term for Catoosa and what's the other one?
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember.
There's another one. There's
Maybe
two of
Broken
them.
Arrow?
Inola? Inola?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Nola.
Or is it Eufaula?
No, what's Inola?
No,
No,
there's.
All right, we talked about the schedule. So the stretch of river where our accident is set is part of the MCARNS, the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River Navigation System.
Woo!
There's several cool short videos on YouTube about the MCARNS that I'll link in the show notes. The construction of the system started in 1952, and it began operation in 1970 from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Little Rock District webpage. And then I figured with these, we can kind of just rotate these highlighted parts that normally just Taylor would read. But since we have plenty of other potential readers here, if we just want to kind of rotate, somebody wants to read this next green section.
I feel like this is in school and the teacher would randomly call on people to like read out loud, like you're using your teacher voice right now.
Mhm.
Please do that.
I can do it as Walt's quarterback.
And
Whoever wants to get us started, and then we can popcorn for the next one.
I'm down. I'm a little upset because we actually talked about the creation of the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River Navigation System in a previous episode, but I can't remember which one. Not a ton about it, but we did talk about.
Was it the pontoon bridge?
I bet it was Arvalfabus somewhere.
There was a lot in the Phobos series. I really enjoyed that series as well.
It was
was
probably
a
in there.
lot.
It keeps coming up. I don't know. I can't remember. This might have come up in an episode of our podcast, but Daniel and I, before starting Waltz, we were talking about starting a podcast called Dam Yankees about dams. So we just like water.
There's definitely like a day where I'm going to be sitting at work where I'd be like, I'd listen to a podcast about dams.
I've actually thought about this, and Taylor, I've talked to you about this, but it'd be fun to do like a Patreon sub-series that's just about canals. Very interested in canals.
It's incredible the things I get excited about when I get closer and closer to 40.
oh yeah, infrastructure.
That's how I felt sitting down with that Ian Toll Pacific War trilogy. It's like, yeah, sitting down with like a big trilogy of books about World War II. It's like, yeah, I'm a dad with no kids. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is fun when your kids ask you about it. The other day, my oldest was like, do you know about the Titanic? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. What can I do for you?
with the books that you read, it would probably be more like, Daddy, what's an Einsatzgruppen?
I do like to learn about that.
All right, let me get my little smile out, and then I can read this little section. With 445 miles of navigation channel, the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River Navigation System is part of the United States Inland Waterway System. Originating at the port of Catoosa in Tulsa and running through Oklahoma and Arkansas to the Mississippi River, the MCARNS provides a minimum 9-foot deep navigation channel and is considered a high-use system that sees 10 to 11 million tons of cargo each year. This is the equivalent of 437,287 semi-trucks or 109,322 rail cars. What would the metric be for that, Tanner?
I don't know, but let me be the first to say your mom's a high-use system. Secondly, thank you for reading that. Let's see here. From the perspective of today's episode, the Robert Y. Loves route on MCARNs will begin at the mouth of the White River, where it joins the Mississippi, heading northwest to the Arkansas Post Canal, which in turn connects to the Arkansas River. The Loves route on the Arkansas took her northwest through Little Rock and then west into Oklahoma. The I-40 bridge that we're discussing today is about 40 miles over the border, according to the Google Maps ruler function.
Yeah, it's about that.
Not as relevant to our story today, but as the previous quote mentioned, a vessel could take the MCARNs all the way up to the Tulsa port of Catoosa.
And that's probably 15 miles east of downtown Tulsa, I think.
Tulsa, not a city I typically think of when I think of marine traffic. So yes, I was very interested in the development of these Tulsa ports. I was reading a little bit about them, sort of that decision to build these sort of shipping hubs here because it takes a little bit of legwork, but yeah, you can connect from there to the rest of the world. Connecting on all these rivers.
I think it's sort of interesting to see like the idea of river traffic come back. In that it's kind of those were really the original highways that westward expansion happened, and then you see these modern facilities get built when people are like, well, we can still use these.
Well, yeah, and like one of those MCARNs videos, that was kind of one of the focuses on it, saying there is this sort of focus on reviving that because it can potentially save a lot of strain on highways. If there's all these the stuff that needs to be shipped, a lot of that can go by river.
It's like the wind-powered vessel that I saw is in development right now. They're going to use wind to move ships.
Tradsportation, they call it.
That is
way better than my
ridiculous.
joke I was going to make, I'll tell you that much.
Let's talk about the bridge. So this is the story not just of a boat, but also of a bridge. The NTSB report includes a good deal of detailed information about the I-40 bridge's construction and Federal Highway Administration bridge sufficiency ratings. So quoting here from the report.
The I-40 bridge was a twin girder, continuous span bridge consisting of 13 concrete deck sections that were 7.5 inches thick and supported by steel grinders and a steel superstructure that was in turn supported by 12 reinforced concrete piers and 2 bridge abutments. Piers 1 through 4 were west of the main channel, and Piers 5 through 12 were east of the main channel. Piers 4 and 5 constituted the concrete piers for the main spans and navigable channel.
Two things here. I know that last one is definitely supposed to be main spans.
All right.
And steel girders, because it's definitely supposed to be steel girders instead of steel grinders.
I was wondering about that.
I was doing my anchor man, like just read it as it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I do the same thing all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a bridge expert.
Get me to confess to anything that way.
They're investigating the bridge collapse and they're like, you got all these steel grinders under here. Are those supposed to be there? I think that's your problem.
I'm hungry now.
The bridge was built in 1967, making it about 35 years old at the time of our story today. And it crossed the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River Navigation System, or MCARNs, at mile marker 360.3. Regarding the road portion of the bridge, the posted speed limit was 70 miles an hour, with a minimum posted speed of 40 miles an hour. In 2001, the ADT, or average daily traffic, was 19,200. That's eastbound and westbound, with commercial vehicles accounting for 27 to 33% of these in years prior to the accident. From the perspective of navigating the river, the bridge was marked with navigational aids to designate the main channel. These were red lights and reflectors, as well as green lights and reflectors to mark the center of the main navigation span. The piers on either side of the channel, these are piers 4 and 5, So pier, I think, is kind of a confusing word here. We're talking about the pillars of the bridge. Piers 4 and 5 were protected on the upstream, the north side, by protection cells to shield against vessel impacts. Yes, they're protected on one side of the river. That also doesn't matter. That's not a factor in the wreck here today. These cells were 41.38 feet in diameter and 16.5 feet high, consisting of sheet piling driven down into the bedrock and filled with stone. Pretty solid if something were to hit it.
Yeah, it's really weird that they would just do it on one side.
That's a point of discussion that we'll get into some numbers for here in just a bit.
And the north side, stand weighty, follow the money.
See, the inside surfaces of Piers 4 and 5 were also protected by treated timbers measuring 10 inches by 18 inches by 89 feet. So a little bit of extra protection in there, to protect against any slamming or rubbing or chafing that might occur. Protection systems on the bridge weren't included when the bridge was originally built in the 60s, as they weren't required. But they were added in 1984 after maintenance on the bridge in 1977 revealed damage from apparent unreported vessel impacts. The neighborhood kids are always smashing their barges into the bridge, things like that.
I wouldn't tell anybody.
Right? It's like 2 a.m. There's no one else around. You just look at your crew and you're like, none of you saw anything.
At the time of the bridge's design, it followed the 1961 and 65 editions of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, Standard Specifications for Highway Bridges. At the time of the incident, it followed the 2002 edition specifications for lateral load tolerance. That report doesn't indicate if these are different from the 61 and 65 specifications. These lateral load requirements accounted for centrifugal forces and ice flows, but not vessel impacts.
The Arkansas
Ice
River
flows.
is known for ice flows.
That seems like foreshadowing.
I guess I was interested in that, the fact that, and I guess because they're not being developed, I guess, for this specific region, but I did think it was interesting that, this bridge in Oklahoma is designed for ice, but not for vessel impacts.
It used to be colder.
I find it weird to not at least have it being, like, not designing it with a vessel strike in mind is a bold move.
Yes.
I will say the AASHTO podcast that we start in our 50s will be fire.
So yeah, like talking about vessel impacts here, I know that was a big thing in some of the recent sort of looking back coverage of this when the Baltimore bridge collapsed, the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed.
Oh,
a lot of
man.
those articles referred back to this, kind of drawing some comparisons. But really, I mean, when you're looking at the types of vessels involved and really the types of bridges, it's like they're not really that comparable because, when people were talking about the Francis Scott Key Bridge of like, how did this happen? Why aren't bridges designed to handle this? It's like, this is an enormous ship hitting this bridge. No bridge is designed to handle this.
It's like the difference between the plane strike that happens on the Empire State Building, like during World War II and 9/11. Like that's the level of difference you're talking about there. Like there's a reason those end differently.
Right.
Saudi Arabia.
That is the reason. All right, so let's talk about bridge sufficiency ratings. All right. The report goes into some detail about the rating system for bridge sufficiency employed by the Federal Highway Administration.
The sufficiency rating is
Daniel?
a numerical. Sorry.
Thumbs up, damn
The sufficiency rating is a numerical rating for a bridge based on its structural adequacy and safety, its serviceability and functional obsolescence, and its essentiality for public use. Ratings range from 0 worst to 100 best and are indicative of a bridge's sufficiency to remain in service. The FHWA uses sufficiency ratings to determine which bridges are eligible for federal aid funds. Deficient bridges with sufficiency ratings less than 50 are eligible for complete replacement, and deficient bridges with sufficiency ratings less than 80 are eligible for rehabilitation.
Is my suspicion that those numbers are very optimistic? Accurate. Like those are the idealistic numbers that we operate under.
Right. I would assume that just given the number of bridges that like a lot of these things probably slip through the cracks until there is a problem like this one that highlights something.
Speaking of bridges, real quick, there was a period of my life where I drove over the I-40 bridge over the Mississippi River, which is Arkansas into Tennessee.
Hernando de Soto Bridge.
Yeah, the Hernando de Soto Bridge.
Who do you like? I like DeSoto. DeSoto? What did he do? He discovered the Mississippi. Oh, yeah, like they wouldn't have found that anyway.
And whenever I was driving that bridge frequently, they were doing a lot of road work in West Memphis, Arkansas, right across the river. So it was not uncommon to be trapped on that bridge for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, while, traffic is at a standstill. And I was always afraid of the New Madrid fault going off while I'm on the bridge. So it would always be an hour of me sitting on the bridge and being like, this is it. This is where I die. And then because of that, I've always had a fear of that bridge. So going back, when was that, 4 years ago, whenever they found all the cracks in the Hernando de Soto Bridge, that had just kind of been, I believe I'm blanking on the word. The reviews of how it got into that condition were pretty worrisome.
Man, could you imagine the last thing you see as you're dying is the Bass Pro Shops pyramid in Memphis?
Just like the Egyptians intended.
The New Madrid fault is probably about due for one, right?
Oh, it's been a couple hundred years.
Yeah, I don't think about it unless I'm in Memphis, and then that's all I can think about.
Oh, that reminds me. I won't read the whole thing, but talking about crossing the bridge, I'll just read this here and then I'll drop it where it makes the most sense, probably at the end. I don't want to forget. I used Local 5 News, the CBS local affiliate out of Oklahoma City for part of this. And on the video, it's a 28-minute just like compilation of all the news coverage about this incident. And the second comment from 2 years ago is a woman who comments, I had no idea this video existed. 2 weeks prior to this incident, I was traveling from Texas to Chicago with my son, who was then driving on I-40. I looked out into the river and I saw in a vision a barge hit the bridge. This is 2 weeks before the incident. I turned to my son and asked, wouldn't it be something if a barge hit this bridge? He replied, Mom, don't say that because every time you do it, it happens. We were to come back on the bridge 2 weeks later, but we had to return home after 1 week, and my son avoided traveling over the bridge, taking a different route. I hadn't heard anything about the incident until 2011. I saw it air on 60 Seconds to Disaster. Feeling guilty, I went into a depression for a year, locked up in my office. I cried out to the Lord for help. That's when I began receiving night visions while I slept. There is more, but that's the relevant part.
Oh no! I was kind of waiting to drop this later on there, but I was on this bridge on May 18th, 2002.
Oh, okay.
We were on a road trip and crossed over it the day before this story begins. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like getting into this. This is Memorial Day weekend. So this is a heavy travel time for a lot of people.
Yeah, we were on our way to my grandfather's in Texas. So
okay,
and crossed over this bridge.
My takeaway is, what would make a great podcast? The Reading YouTube Comments podcast.
I'm sure it's out there.
That was incredible, though. Really.
So,
I'm really glad
this is my avoided the plane on 9/11. Yeah.
I will read more of it. I'm going to skip the middle chunk, but the last part is really good. Yes. So this is the third paragraph of the YouTube comment.
Wow.
It says, I have future prophetic visions, one of a mega earthquake in California and the rapture occurring afterward. I was in my transformed glorious body looking over Los Angeles. I saw a huge crack from San Diego to San Francisco. I also saw the rapture saints go up to meet the Lord. This
feels like one of the books I'm reading now.
This vision will be uploaded in January 2023 by God is Love 7. My condolences to the family of those who perished that early morning. God bless. It is unclear to me at the end if she is talking about the video that she is commenting on or the rapture that she
Or
is
her
imagining.
prophetic vision.
Yeah, her premonition.
Oh.
Okay, so we heard it here first. So we'll come back to this if
Oh man, just 2 years off, but sometimes you don't carry the zero.
that kind of puts things in perspective. This story doesn't seem quite so bad when we think that,
It is not the rapture.
this apocalyptic earthquake in California.
The I-40 Great Disappointment is a bizarre place for this to end up.
Let's see. So we talked about bridges going to rehab if their score is low enough here. So the most recent assessment before the time of our incident was in June 2001, when the I-40 bridge was given a sufficiency rating of 67. So it could be better.
So close.
The average for interstate bridges in Oklahoma at the time of the report was 76.2. No. National average, 85.7. So Oklahoma, not the worst in the class, probably, but could do some more studying, maybe.
Yeah, you could probably dig on what Mississippi's bridge ratings are.
I think I remember seeing a report recently that Ohio, like, only 10% of the bridges aren't in like that 50% category or whatever. So
Whoa.
I don't think Ohio could talk shit about anybody.
Oh, Ohio's highways are not great.
They are
I don't
not.
know what you're talking about.
I say that with someone that has a lot of love for Ohio. I actually honestly do.
Name all the
Highway,
cities.
no. No.
Well, I really love.
What's your favorite city in Ohio, and why is it Canton? Is the real question.
What's your favorite city in Ohio that doesn't start with C?
There you
My
go.
favorite city in Ohio
Akron.
that doesn't. Akron, yeah, it's Akron.
Right after
Dayton.
Canton.
I've never been to
Dayton.
Dayton though.
Dayton is nice.
It-
I like
It's worth visiting. I like Dayton.
Yeah, I liked living there. I went to grad school there.
Oh, nice.
Go Flyers!
That's not where I went for grad school. I went to Wright State. I went to the dumb college in Dayton.
Wright State. It's a dog.
It is, but
It is, but it's tricky.
but their mascot's the
They're
Raiders.
the pilots. Oh, dang it! Oh, I couldn't
Mhm.
remember.
Their mascot's like a husky, but Rowdy Raider is a dog, not a
Which
Viking.
which
or
doesn't
something.
make any sense.
Rowdy.
You might take a dog with you on a raid, I guess. The police do
Sure. Oh my god. They love raids.
Just
Yeah, the
no
colors-
knocks
Sometimes they
at
don't love
Wright
dogs.
State.
it.
Wright State. Their school colors are blue and orange or something, right?
Wright State is basically like Oakland Athletics colors. Like
They're
the
just
yellow
the
and green.
athletics now, sir.
The Oaklamento Athletics that they are now. Green and yellow. The biggest factors affecting the I-40 bridge's sufficiency rating were its ADT, its average daily traffic, substructure, and bridge roadway width. Quoting from the report here,
If the ADT were reduced to 132 or less, the sufficiency rating could be increased by almost 13 points. If the substructure rating, which is now 5, were 6 or more, the sufficiency rating would increase by 11 points. Finally, the bridge roadway width should equal the approach roadway width. The I-40 bridge is 64 feet wide, and the roadway approaching it is 84 feet wide, thereby lowering the bridge's sufficiency rating by 6 points.
let's see. So with the technical aspects out of the way, we can get into the incident here. We'll start the incident portion at 3:40 a.m. on May 19th, 2002. This is when our main character, the towboat Robert Y. Love, left Decatur, Alabama. Shout out to Stephen Decatur, someone who we've talked about on the show before a few times. On the Tennessee River, en route to Catoosa, Oklahoma, pushing 2 empty asphalt tank barges, the aforementioned M60 and M62, positioned side by side. This route would take the towboat and barges down the Tennessee River as it winds north through the state of Tennessee and into Kentucky, where it empties into the Ohio at Paducah. Now, during this portion of the journey, they presumably took in some of the natural wonders of Tennessee. For example, Nathan Bedford Forest State Park, which would have been on their left as they traveled north on the Tennessee River.
Damn.
Wow.
It has 4.7 out of 5 stars with 685 ratings on Google.
Wow. That's a lot.
I talked about this with Taylor a couple days ago, but I feel like there's nothing that better sums up the undeniable natural beauty of the United States coupled with its utter moral degeneracy than Nathan Bedford Forest State Park.
Yep.
It's like seeing Robert Byrd's name on everything in West Virginia when you go through there.
And for listeners who are unfamiliar, Nathan Bedford Forrest, he was, I think most people would remember him as the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, the original one.
The real one.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Also oversaw
Was he involved
the
in Fort Pillow as well?
Yeah, massacre.
Wow, you both said Fort Pillow at the same time.
Just a big old piece of shit. There's still a place in Arkansas called Forest City. I
I was going to say, that's the same person, right?
Yeah, because after the war, he got into land speculation. You know.
As
Yeah.
you
He became an honest man.
do.
You move to this part of Tennessee. I think it's the town is like Ava, Tennessee. You move there, and like your new friends, like, hey, some of us are gonna go hang out at the forest. Want to come? And like you're like, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, like nature, sure. And like you get there, and it's like, the forest. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you writing Get Out 2?
I mean,
I was also telling Taylor, it's like when Katie and I lived in Georgia briefly, and we were there on a July 4th, and so we went to see some fireworks at Stone Mountain, not at all knowing what Stone Mountain was, and getting there, and it's like, oh, this is like Confederate Mount Rushmore.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's even
weird.
worse, Mount Rushmore.
They took an evil thing and they made it eviler somehow.
I mean, you said it. Part of being in the United States is that if you do something evil, you get a park named after you. I'd say we're about 20 years from Oklahoma having a Timothy McVeigh State Park.
Jesus. Wrong kind of evil.
Okay.
I mean, the man had ideas.
He was just ahead of his time.
Truly.
You're not
He would be
like
such a great podcaster now.
Oh my, yeah, he would.
I
Him and
do.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
I do really enjoy that Forest City, Arkansas, though, is a majority African American city now, which, like, obviously he would have fucking hated, right? So I do like that part just a little bit, but they should really change the name.
Let's see here. Entering the Mississippi at Cairo, Illinois, the Robert Y. Love continued downriver until she entered the M. Carnes at mile 599 of the lower Mississippi River on May 23rd. On the evening of the 25th, as the Love was transiting Lock 13 near Van Buren, Arkansas, the alternate captain, who'd been in charge since leaving Decatur, left the vessel and was replaced by the regular captain. I saw an interesting fact about Van Buren, Arkansas here. No, not Van Buren, Indiana. Van Buren, Arkansas. I noticed this as I was just sort of mapping my way up this route. Van Buren, Arkansas, it is named for Martin Van Buren, but it is not named for him as president. It is named for him when he was Secretary of State.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they got in early on the Van Buren game.
Invest early.
I don't
mean,
know. I don't know why. I don't know if it was like if there was a Dutch influence and they're like, oh, cool, one of our guys is in power now.
They were just speculating that Van Buren would be remembered like Washington, and like the name would just be better.
In actuality, the Arkansas standards for getting a town name for you are just real low.
See, Forest City.
Yeah. Right.
Well, it's like our mom's hometown, Washington, North Carolina, I believe is named after George Washington when he was a general rather than when he was president. So like fairly early. That was a solid investment, though, I would say. So the captain was on watch. This is the regular captain now. The captain was on watch until being relieved by the pilot at 10:45 p.m., and the captain returned to take over around 5:30 on the morning of May 26th. This is the Sunday prior to Memorial Day. Around 7 a.m. that morning, The deckhand went into the wheelhouse to clean the deck, then spoke with the captain for about half an hour before leaving the wheelhouse. The deckhand was then instructed to wake the relief mate as they were approaching Lock 16, mile 366.6, spooky, of the M-Carnes, and they would be reaching it in about an hour. The towboat traveled at an average 6.7 miles per hour. They would be reaching it unless something happened before they got there. It was about 7:25 a.m. when the deckhand woke up the mate, then went about with other cleaning duties, collecting trash and emptying the mop bucket into the engine room sink. Continuing here from the accident report, and these three colors, if I could just have three volunteers who want to read.
I'll read the green one.
I'll read the blue one.
I'll go
I'll
yellow.
do the one in the middle.
Oh, well.
You
Guess
got
what
it, Gus.
first?
All right.
When the deckhand returned to the galley, the mate was there, and they were talking and drinking coffee when they felt an impact and the refrigerators and other galley equipment fell to the deck. They said that they heard a big bang, went outside the galley, and saw a tractor. I hate the way that that's phrased. And saw it.
I was confused. I was like, I've never seen it written this way.
As someone that works in this industry, it's like offensive.
But it's the NTSB's words.
And saw a tractor semi-trailer and a pickup truck drive off the I-40.
The captain stated that after he told the deckhand to awaken the mate, he watched to make sure the deckhand walked safely down the stairs from the wheelhouse, then returned his attention to maneuvering the tow. The captain reported that the last thing he remembered before the accident was aligning the tow to pass under the I-40 bridge main navigation span, somewhere between Piers 4 and 5, and passing a green navigation buoy to port approximately 0.35 miles from the bridge.
After the accident, the captain stated that his unconsciousness occurred all at once, and further stated, "I remember looking out to the side of the buoy and then looking back at the bridge, and after that, I don't remember nothing." His first recollection after the illusion was being in a crouched position between the operator's chair and the vessel control console, realizing his head and arm were wet from the soft drink he had placed on the console.
After the elision?
After the...
I love that they're being really pedantic about collision versus elision.
Versus elision, yes.
What is elision? I'm not...
Elision means that... I think elision is only used in like a maritime sense, and elision
Okay.
is a boat hitting a stationary object.
Yeah.
Rather than a collision where two things are moving.
I learned this from y'all's podcast.
Not an illusion. He's making some obscure reference to something here.
I thought that was quite poetic.
Let's see here. The captain stated to investigators that after regaining consciousness, he struggled to orient himself and focus visually on anything. Once he was back in a standing position, he saw through the wheelhouse window that the highway bridge had collapsed on the deck of the two barges. He immediately sounded 5 blasts on the boat's whistle, a pretty standard warning. He also saw, presumably the same two vehicles, the pickup and the semi, go over the bridge. He continued blowing the boat's whistle in an attempt to warn other oncoming vehicles of the danger.
If I was the captain of a ship that hit a bridge, and I don't know what's going on, and suddenly I see the bridge collapsed, that has to be the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
You probably have that split second of like, did I do that? Is that me?
I am in so much trouble. Like,
I'm gonna get fired.
I had a warehouse job. You know those machines? I don't remember what the name is, but they're like I don't know how to say this without it sounding kind of dirty, but it's the machine that like wets the tape that they put on boxes. Do you know what I'm talking about? Any of y'all been in a warehouse? It's a tape
Not that
wetting
type of
machine.
warehouse.
I can
I
imagine.
ain't been in the tape factory, no.
It's I don't know.
I was operating the spool slobberer.
Went to the wrong Scotch factory and ended up at a brewery.
It's kind of like, imagine a giant calculator that just spits at you. But I knocked that off a table one time and it exploded. And when that happened, I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm just kind of imagining that on a grand scale.
One time I left some people in a cave that I was guiding them to.
In Thailand?
But I didn't lose
Those
that
kids?
job. Yeah. One kid and his mom.
Did you turn the lights off?
You don't wander. Yeah, no, absolute darkness. For like 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
This is why you don't leave the tour group. Number one. The boys know this already. There were 2 caves. I tore the second cave right only after the tour. There's a break between these. Only after the tour does a man come up to me and say, I think my wife and my son, I think they're in the cave. And so I start heading back, freaking out, to the cave we were just in. And he goes, no, I think maybe the first one. So yeah, we found them there in the dark singing songs. Did not get fired though. Terrible.
I don't think I knew that.
I don't think I knew that story at all.
Oh,
That
Sharp
is
did.
the closest story we've ever had on the podcast to generating an incident report.
Yeah.
Turns out that's like a 52 on the bridge scale.
They were surprisingly cool with it. I don't.
Ray dodging just narrowly a child Floyd Collins.
Oh, it wasn't that bad.
Is that the guy who got stuck in the cave?
Yeah.
Like head first?
Mammoth.
Yeah.
No, that you're thinking of Nutty Putty.
I'm thinking of
Yeah.
Nutty Putty. I'm always
Yeah.
thinking of Nutty Putty.
I just listened to that Morbid episode recently.
Let's see here. Speaking of dangerous situations here. So when the mate arrived at the wheelhouse, he was instructed by the captain to send a distress signal to the Coast Guard, which was done on VHF FM channel 16. This call was heard and logged at 7:45 a.m. by both the Coast Guard station at Memphis, Tennessee, and the lock operator at Lock 15 of the MCARNs, the most recent lock that the vessel had passed through, where the Arkansas connects to the Robert S. Kerr Reservoir. The chief engineer was making routine rounds in the engine room at the time of the accident. He didn't report any change in engine speed leading up to the impact. The pilot and the other mate on board had both been off duty and asleep at the time of the accident. The pilot woke up and saw portions of the bridge lying across the barges through his window on the port side.
Well, that has to be a bad feeling.
Yep.
Yeah, this is one where in the news coverage they still have, there's a lot of visuals of how it is resting right after the accident. And yeah, these barges are just sort of crushed underneath these spans of the bridge. After checking on the condition of the barges, the pilot went into the wheelhouse, finding, quote, the captain was visibly shaken. He was standing and he was in tears, shaken. I do think it's interesting that he checked on the condition of the barges first.
Priorities.
Like, they're f***ed, I'm pretty sure. Like,
I suppose from a safety point of view, making sure that you don't have a bigger issue. Also, depending on what they're carrying, you've got potential hazmat
that's
in
true.
the water that is going to be.
Are they still empty at this point?
They're still empty. They're still empty at this point. Well, now they're full of bridge, but they were empty.
Take it downstream and sell it to Arkansas.
I'm just imagining, like, if it had been full of asphalt, it's like this happens and like breaks it open and they accidentally like pave the Arkansas River. Like,
There's a new bridge.
Now low water bridge.
so here we do see some quick thinking. You know, we do try to highlight some of the positives when they do happen, and I think the pilot here really demonstrates a lot of good qualities. The pilot immediately relieved the captain of watch and relieved the mate from handling communication. The captain explained to both men that he had passed out, hadn't seen or heard the impact, and that his last memory before blacking out was seeing the deckhand leave the wheelhouse.
Hell of a time to black out.
No joke.
The pilot ordered the mate and chief engineer into the Robert Y. Love's motorboat.
Robert loves motorboat.
As he could hear people in the river yelling for help.
Jeez.
The two were not ultimately able to rescue anyone after searching for 30 minutes. I think I did look up when sunrise was, and I don't remember what time it was, but this is a little before 8 a.m.
It should have been up by this point.
They did observe another recreational boat pull someone from the water. When the bridge collapsed, 11 vehicles would either go down with it or subsequently drive over the broken expanse of the bridge, dropping roughly 60 feet into the river. These 11 vehicles carried 19 occupants. Also on the news broadcast that I was watching on YouTube, the sort of compilation, the local reporter on the ground does mention, quote, horses that were stuck in a horse trailer. That's not mentioned in the NTSB report that I saw, but he does mention those being recovered from the water. Not clear if they were alive or not.
I got bad news for you about those horses.
Yeah, I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess very dead.
He does use the term stuck, though, which kind of
It's
indicates
true.
that they're alive. I don't know. Like, you could, I don't know.
They were dangling or something. They channeled Dick the Freight Horse and survived.
On this show, horses have a surprising survival rate in maritime accidents.
Better than women and children.
Well, and also depending on where they are in the river, it's not out of the question that they could have their head above the water, because horse trailers can breathe really well.
Yeah, and I don't know the specifics, but I know that there's at least one vehicle that goes over the bridge but doesn't end up in the water. It hits either on the side or I think one of the collapsed spans of the bridge. So I don't think that all of these necessarily went into the river.
It's somehow worse almost.
Well,
but yeah, so this
60 feet to
yeah, that was one of the last parts I added to the notes because it wasn't mentioned in the NTSB report, and I figure they would mention that. They usually would, but it did come up on the local news coverage, which again, local news coverage notoriously can get things wrong right after the fact.
We have lost Gus temporarily, it appears.
I thought he was just very displeased.
I honestly did too.
He's upset about the horses. It's okay.
Yeah.
Daniel's not.
Yeah.
I was
Don't
going
we
to say.
think
Oh, go. You can go.
No, you go ahead.
No, that's okay. I've already. Okay, I will. Gus also can't hear us.
Oh no. He might have to back out and jump back in.
Yeah, usually that fixes it on Zencaster.
Okay, leave and return.
Yeah.
All right, I'm saying leave and return to him now. I'm going to go ahead and mention this though, because when Ray and I went to Weber's Falls and went to the Weber's Fall Historical Museum, they had a scrapbook about this incident and had a little bit of information on all of the victims. And there was a barrel racer from Texas that was returning to Texas after going to a rodeo of some sort, I believe in Fort Smith.
What's a barrel racer?
It's a rodeo thing. They just race horses around in like a figure 8 pattern around barrels.
Yeah, so you put them like in the arena. There's two barrels on opposite ends, and yeah, they do a figure 8 around them. And
There's
only
no racing
women...
of barrels, actually.
It's way less cool than what you're thinking about.
Yeah,
it's like a three-cone drill for a horse.
Honestly, it's not that dissimilar.
And
I was thinking of
only
two
let
guys like
women do it for some
running on
reason.
barrels down the river and seeing who could get down there faster.
Oh, yeah.
But no, that's okay. That's that. I guess that's cool too. So, yeah.
It's a big thing in like rural horse girl culture.
I dated a barrel racer once.
Yeah, you did.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Let's hear her name
College.
right now.
I would like to wake up with my skin on.
Barrel racer does sound a bit like a 1830s slur for like German immigrants or something.
With loose morals.
It's what elves derisively call dwarves in The Hobbit.
Let's see here. So some factors affecting the vehicles and their drivers. So of the 11 drivers who went over the bridge, 4 survived the plunge into the river. 3 of these would be interviewed by investigators. I think the 4th one was injured seriously enough that they weren't included in this. But 3 of them were interviewed.
They reported traveling at speeds ranging from 57 to 75 miles per hour. Two of the drivers reported vehicles in front of them disappearing. Both thought the vehicles had driven over the crown or rise of the bridge. The third driver stated he was unaware of any bridge problems until he passed over a rise and saw the bridge was out. One of the drivers stated that he applied his brakes but was unable to stop before driving off the edge.
I could feel that in the back of my neck.
Yeah.
One of the survivors, from what I saw at the historical museum, one of the survivors that went over the bridge was a tractor semi-trailer driver.
Mhm.
Just don't call it that.
Well, I called
Your grandpa was a trucker.
I called it that as a joke, but that is also the truth. The tractor semi-trailer driver survived.
Yeah, and he's one that I believe they interview in the news coverage as well, because he's one who's rescued by some of those boaters.
Hmm.
So investigators tried to recreate the visibility conditions that would have been present for drivers of various types of vehicle traveling east and westbound. So in the report, there is a table showing the estimated first point of possible perception for drivers of different types of vehicles traveling east or westbound. In other words, the first time and place that a hazard can be perceived by a normal, unimpaired driver. So this table shows an eastbound passenger vehicle. You'd have 200 feet of reaction time, or of visibility here before to notice this hazard. An eastbound tractor semi-trailer would have 300 feet. Westbound passenger vehicle, 150 feet. And westbound tractor trailer, 350 feet. I was looking at some of the math here. I don't think they included this in the report, but I was curious. For some perspective, looking back to the driver's statements where they said they were traveling between 57 and 75 miles an hour, 57 miles per hour is 83.6 feet per second. 75 miles an hour is 110 feet per second. So, for example, a westbound driver in a passenger vehicle traveling 57 miles an hour would have about 1.8 seconds to react.
Damn.
That's just to react. That's not necessarily the time you need to stop your car.
Right.
At 75 miles per hour, it drops to about 1.4 seconds. So, again, this is like fairly early in the morning. It's not a hugely trafficked area at this moment. So you have a good number of vehicles who are traveling in a fairly isolated setting. So you're not going to notice in time, probably, what's going on. So, quoting here again from the accident report.
A tractor semi-trailer driver stated that he had been heading westbound on the bridge at 70 miles per hour and had his windows up. He was traveling in the right lane and no other vehicles were around him. As he came up over the rise in the bridge, the roadway was gone and the next thing he recalled seeing was a large exposed bridge support pillar. He then recalled being in the water and trying to grab debris to stay afloat. Some nearby boaters threw him a cushion and then picked him up in their boat. He could hear another man yelling for help and saw another boat pick up that man.
Imagine like just getting to the lake and having to pull some people out of the water after this.
We'll talk about those boaters in the next section here, but yeah, this is just like such a crazy thing to have to imagine. It's like you are just, maybe you're just getting started with your day. It's a nice day to be driving, no traffic. You're on your own. Maybe you're fairly zoned out. You're in the groove. Maybe you just put on your favorite, I don't know, George Jones cassette.
Yes.
and this happens and ruins your day. So yes, on the topic of boats in the river. So there's a fishing tournament taking place out of Weber's Falls, about 2.5 miles upriver of the bridge. And one of the contestants in the competition was likely the first to see a problem developing before the collision even took place. This person was interviewed on the local news coverage. He noticed the tow heading towards the west bank of the river, well outside of the normal navigation span. I'm sure if you spend time on this river, you know what these usually look like when they're, traversing this area. And this didn't look normal to him. Kind of like what we talked about with the Torrey Canyon. You just know when something looks wrong. He stated that the bridge supports collapsed immediately after the towboat struck the pier. Later, it would be established that 2 of the support piers had collapsed, taking with them a 503-foot section of the bridge. Witness/rescuer Dwayne Copeland reported to the local CBS affiliate that 15 seconds elapsed between the time of the collapse and the first vehicle falling into the water. There's different reports here. The NTSB report mentions the possibility of some vehicles being on the bridge when it collapsed. None of the local eyewitnesses seem to report that, but it is, I mean, you don't see everything perfectly when you're watching this in real time.
I think like you saw the same thing with the collapse in Baltimore, where when it first comes out, there were 40 cars on the bridge when this happened, and like those numbers get changed, revised down a lot of times in these things, and things get double counted or something like that.
Well, and things are happening so quickly that it's impossible to really just do an accurate kind of visual accounting,
Oh yeah, if you're on the river in a boat and you see this happening, I'm sure your adrenaline is.
None of these people are in these boats this morning waiting to count how many cars go over this bridge.
Just trying to catch some bass.
Kind of an interesting little side note here. If you're watching that local coverage compilation from the local CBS out of Oklahoma City, you can see a quite young Jim Acosta, recently of CNN.
Huh.
I was sort of like looking away from the screen, and then I heard a voice. I was like, I know that voice. And I looked up, and it was a young, dapper-looking Jim Acosta.
That's funny.
So other boaters heard the collapse and began speeding towards the accident site. One boater reported seeing 2 more vehicles drive over the bridge and called 911, reaching the Muskogee Police Department. After this call, he witnessed 5 more vehicles drive over the bridge, most, possibly all traveling in the westbound lanes. When this boater was 30 to 40 yards upstream from the bridge, he fired a flare pistol to warn other drivers away. I think this is one of the most pivotal moments in this whole thing. A westbound tractor trailer apparently saw this flare and got the message, braking hard and partially jackknifing on the highway, but stopping short of the collapsed portion of the bridge. Vehicles traveling behind this truck were able to stop in time. So it seems that the boater who fired the flare is also the operator of the boat that pulled someone from the water near the bow of the barges.
It's life-saving equipment in use.
Yeah, so this guy's like personally responsible for not just the guy he pulls from the water, but literally, I mean, quite potentially dozens of other lives he saved by having this flare pistol available.
Well, good on the tractor or the tractor trailer driver for catching that signal, and reacting to it appropriately.
Knowing that, like, okay, this is some sort of thing I'm going to need to stop for. Like that is, that's amazing on all fronts here.
My reaction would just be staring at that and being like, "What's that?"
As I drive over the bridge. Yeah.
Is that a UFO?
That would be my go-to. Yeah.
So this boater also reported seeing 2 other boats from the tournament each pull 1 survivor from the water. A total of 3 were pulled alive from the river. Again, I think there's some confusion over who was technically pulled from the water, who went over the bridge but wasn't technically in the water. The Muskogee police ultimately fielded 25 calls related to the bridge collapse, the first of which was logged at 7:48, so about 3 minutes after the first distress signal was sent to the Coast Guard. In addition to the Muskogee police and Oklahoma Highway Patrol, 7 other local police departments responded to the accident. 6 ambulances, the first of which was on scene by 7:56, 17 local fire departments, 10 EMS departments, 8 emergency management services, 7 state agencies, and 7 federal agencies, for a grand total of 58 agencies responding to this.
Wow.
You just know there had to have been like just so much friction with so many police departments and federal agencies. So much as like just big dicking each other of like, well, I'm in charge around these parts. And then you get upstaged by like an FBI guy.
There's some like volunteer from the Oklahoma Equine Society demanding answers.
Technically, by some quirk, I have jurisdiction here.
Is it better when people are fighting for jurisdiction or fighting to pass the buck?
Spoilers, my part of the podcast is going to be about this part.
Quit spoiling.
I'm very excited for that. Let's see. So, in total, 14 people were killed due to the collapse of the I-40 bridge, evenly split between drivers and passengers. The youngest of those killed was a 3-year-old girl. 2 drivers and 1 passenger sustained serious injuries but survived. The 2 remaining drivers suffered minor injuries for a total of 5 survivors. None of the crew of the Robert Y. Love sustained any injuries, nor was the boat itself damaged at all. The barges, MM60 and MM62, suffered about $275,000 worth of damage combined, but they were repaired and back in service by July 2002. So, barges, fairly easy to repair. There's not that much to them. But the total cost of repairing the bridge, which reopened on July 29th, 2002, was estimated at $30.1 million in 2002 money. So this includes the cost of operating the necessary detours and the repairs to bridges on those routes needed to accommodate the increased flow of traffic.
And that's where my memories of this event preside, is the drive back and my father cussing a lot about a new route.
Well, that was the interesting thing. It's kind of like a butterfly effect here, where this bridge is totally out. So as they're routing all this traffic to these other bridges, they're finding, oh, well, this bridge has a score of, 54. We need to do something about this bridge.
Right.
And it now has way more traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this the first episode of your podcast where the main boat is completely unharmed in any way?
I feel like we have had some here, because
I'm not talking about the Dave Matthews incident.
there was harm. There was harm. There are some, like in some of our collision episodes, very often the collider is usually just fine, like which is like superficial damage, where the one that gets T-boned is, sinks immediately.
Right.
I'm sure we've had others where, for whatever reason, there wasn't actually any damage to it. Well, I guess we just did the globe mutiny, but that's, a different type of thing. The globe is just fine.
wasn't counting. I wasn't thinking of that one.
That was a fun one, but I'm glad we're done with it. So getting into the investigation, obviously in a situation like this, one of the first things you look at is the toxicology report. The captain underwent toxicological testing after the accident in accordance with company policy and federal law, Title 46 CFR 16.240, about 3.5 hours after the accident. Title 49 CFR 40.85 specifies that this testing must screen for marijuana, cocaine, opiates, PCP, and amphetamines. None were present in the captain's system. The only detectable substance reflected in the captain's blood and urine was a low level of diphenhydramine, better known to the public as Benadryl. The captain said he took Benadryl occasionally for sinus issues, but wasn't on any prescription medications. So this is not an abnormal amount. This is like very low levels. He's not seeing the Hat Man or anything here. This is totally normal usage. Alcohol is also tested for, coming back negative. The other crew were tested for those 5 major drug categories. They're not for alcohol, as they weren't on duty at the time of the accident. In terms of medical history, here's where it gets a little bit interesting. The captain's license had most recently been renewed in 1997, at which point he underwent a Coast Guard required physical. The captain had no history of cardiovascular disease, dizziness, fainting, hearing problems, or any major vision problems. And I've got a quote here.
The captain described his health as good. He reported that he had recently suffered from dizzy spells at home, which he attributed to overexertion from yard work. He also had sustained a dizzy spell and nausea while on board the towboat Jenny Delmer on the Wednesday before this accident, while preparing lunch for the crew. He said that after he lay down, his rest was interrupted twice by phone calls. He stated that when called for watch about 1700, he felt fine.
You got to put it on the do not disturb mode there. I mean, you don't have a lot of sleep time here.
He must have been preparing a hell of a lunch.
Right.
I thought that was a cool detail, though. It's like captain who cares about his crew. No, he's making him a lunch. Although I don't know how involved the lunch was. The captain attested to having navigated the I-40 bridge, quote, hundreds of times, and that it was, quote, an easy bridge to navigate. The analysis portion of the report looks at the factors that made this an easy bridge to navigate. Those included the contour of the river didn't require much maneuvering, the navigation span of the bridge was relatively wide at 296 feet, The barge's tow width was 108 feet, and the current in the area was around 2 miles per hour. So nothing inherently that would make this a difficult bridge to navigate. Sleep history. We talked a bit about his sleep schedule. The investigators looked into the captain's sleep schedule leading up to the accident, and while there had been significant disruption to the captain's sleep schedule over the 72 hours prior to the accident, resulting in a sleep debt of 10 to 11 and a half hours, the nature of his loss of consciousness and recovery isn't consistent with a falling asleep incident. Far more likely, and this is something I can talk about because I've experienced this, far more likely is that the captain suffered a heart arrhythmia event, which can lead to just this type of sudden but brief incapacitation. So when I got to this part of the report, I did feel a deep connection with this because I suddenly sort of understood how something like this could happen, because I have experienced a heart arrhythmia that, put me in the emergency room. And like, it's very hard to describe, but yes, I was literally sitting at my desk. I was grading quizzes, and literally the next thing I know, I'm on the floor. I don't remember falling. I don't remember like the seconds that happened there. I remember being on the floor, feeling like I was going to throw up and like feeling my heart racing now. I wasn't out for minutes like this was, but like, I do understand sort of the situation the captain's in here. Fortunately, I was sitting at my desk when it happened, but yeah, if I'd been driving my car, yeah, like this type of thing happens.
That's a whole new phobia for me to have.
While I'm talking about that, I will just say, as a PSA for anyone who drinks energy drinks, your Monsters, your Red Bulls, when I was in the emergency room because I had an elevated heart rate after the original like arrhythmia, and then it like skyrocketed up to like I like sort of noticed it out the corner of my eye. It was at like 220 beats per minute.
Oh,
Damn.
man.
You were a hummingbird.
They literally had the one nurse like literally shaved my chest, had the paddles ready to go. I was seeing all this in like slow motion because like when your heart's beating that fast, your brain is not working, and had the pedals ready to go until like the kind of grizzled old doctor got me to cough really, really, really hard, and it like reset it. But anyway,
some Dr. House shit.
I was about to say, I think that's a plot line in The Pit.
After everything calmed down and like I was like stable again, the nurse who had almost given me the shocks, he asked me, because I didn't have any history of like heart problems like this, he's like, have you done any cocaine tonight? I was like, no. His next question to me was, do you drink energy drinks?
Jesus.
So yes, as a PSA to anyone who drinks energy drinks, they're only marginally less bad for you than cocaine.
Wow.
Red Bull gives you
Wow.
wings.
Someone's going to take the opposite lesson from that.
Probably, yes. So, quoting from the report here, there's a reference to, we have a quote coming up here, and it uses a term I wasn't familiar with, and that is kip feet. Kip being short for kilopound, making a kip foot equal to 1,000 foot-pounds. So,
After the captain's incapacitation, the vessel continued in a left turn and struck Pier 3, about 201 feet west of the navigation channel, at an approximately 56-degree angle. The safety board calculated the kinetic energy of the tow to be 4,498.79 kip feet. Pier 3 was not, nor was required to be, designated to withstand a concentrated horizontal load of that magnitude and therefore collapsed.
yeah, the numbers themselves don't mean much to me, but again, kind of like with the Francis Scott Key Bridge, it's like the bridge is simply not designed for this. This one would make a little bit more sense because, towboats do impact these bridges quite often.
Don't like
Right.
that.
Whenever one of these happens, they review these, and impacts actually do happen pretty often.
Just get to
Well-
accumulate new things to be scared of this
Yeah,
episode.
didn't need to know
Just
that.
doing great.
Yeah. I drive across the Arkansas River twice every day.
The extra scary part is like these barges are empty, and this happens,
Right.
and it immediately collapses.
God.
Yep. Don't like the things I'm learning here.
So conclusions here from the NTSB report from this episode. Due to the seemingly random cause of the accident, preventative measures are a challenge, but there's always those gaps in the safety that can be filled. You can account for some of these random events, like a unpredictable heart arrhythmia out of nowhere here. The captain was alone in the wheelhouse when he lost consciousness. That situation wouldn't be uncommon on a vessel like the Robert Y. Love. There's lots of times where the person in the wheelhouse is on their own. At that time, 3 of the other crew were awake and moving around the boat, but none were in position to notice something was wrong before it was too late. One possibility explored in the NTSB report is the use of wheelhouse alerter systems. And at the time of the report, the safety board was aware of 3 companies developing and evaluating the effectiveness of devices that would have alerted the crew to the captain's incapacitation. These systems work by sounding an alarm, quote, should the vessel operator either fail to move the rudder or fail to physically move for a predetermined period of time.
I know trains use this now.
It's like you have to do something to interact with it for
you pretty much have to hit the button every so often when it beeps at you. The
I am awake button.
Pretty much.
Bridge protection was another priority highlighted in the report. So we had said that those protection cells had been installed on the north side of Piers 4 and 5. On either side of the main navigation span. The barges of the Robert Y. Love struck the bridge at Pier 3. Even if you had both sides protected, it wouldn't have protected Pier number 3. But even those protection cells hadn't been required when the bridge was originally built. Man, I did it again. I typed illusion. I guess. Reviewing other bridge elision incidents, the Coast Guard found that at least 6 of them involved vessels striking piers outside of the main navigation channel. Which makes sense, because in a situation like this where you have a barge impacting the bridge at full speed, it's probably not even going to be close to where it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it makes sense. It's well outside the main navigation channel that's actually protected. The report acknowledges that it would be impractical to install protection cells for all piers of each bridge that crosses a river.
According to ODOT, in today's dollars, providing protection cell costs about $300,000 per pier in labor and materials. ODOT also noted that installing protection cells at all piers of the I-40 bridge would cost approximately $6.8 million. The I-40 bridge is just one of Oklahoma's 11 highway crossings on the M Carnes. 6 of these 11 crossings have parallel bridges, for a total of 17 bridges with 74 piers in the water. To place a protection cell on both the upstream and downstream sides of the piers, and one in between each parallel bridge on the M Carnes alone, would require 128 protection cells at the cost of $39.7 million.
So you can extend that out for an idea of how costly it would be to do that on every bridge in the state, in the country, etc. It's not practical or really even necessary for most of these to have, full protection like that. The final point of focus in the report is the development of motorist warning systems. So in a situation like the I-40 bridge, a motorist warning system indicating that the bridge was out could have greatly reduced the number of casualties. An example like this was installed on the Queen Isabella Causeway Bridge, connecting Port Isabel, Texas to South Padre Island, after a 2001 barge elision that resulted in 8 deaths. That accident was somewhat overshadowed by an event that happened 4 days earlier.
Did this happen in September?
It happened on September 15th. So there was something else.
We've had a lot of 9/11 references in this episode.
Ray and I drove over this bridge, the reconstructed bridge.
Stay away from these bridges.
There was no system anywhere that would have told us if the bridge was out.
That's interesting because at the time of this report, they're even referring to it as being unreliable. So maybe they just took it out.
And not to do this again, but I was on top of the World Trade Center 2 weeks before 9/11.
You're like the opposite of Mothman.
Yeah, right.
So they did install that for around $900,000. This is a fiber optic warning system that was installed when that bridge was reopened. In the event that the cable is severed, it immediately triggers a warning system to inform drivers that the bridge is out.
Well, it's nice knowing that it used to be there.
At least.
The report does note that a similar system was installed Oh, here's the one I was thinking of. The report does note that a similar system was installed on the Sunshine Skyway Bridge after its run-in with the Summit Venture, but that system has been characterized as unreliable.
You would only know it was unreliable if it collapsed and didn't warn
Yeah,
you.
it seems like a hard thing to truly test for. So
You don't really want to control with no protections, right?
So I mean that's sort of where the report leaves us for this one. I mean, this one is it isn't one where you can learn something directly necessarily about the ship aspect of it. It's more about the padding the room around the boat. Rather, things you can do to protect the bridge, things you can do to warn motorists.
How scary heart palpitations are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things like that of, hey, get checked out, have your get an EKG done every now and then.
Are you saying check on your boys, check on your mates?
Check on your boys. And your first boy is your own heart.
I think my wife actually just thanks you for giving me a new thing to WebMD when I'm having a panic attack.
WebMD noted for calming people down.
Yeah.
After that, so I've been on a heart medicine since then. And I haven't had anything like that at all since it happened, just that one time, which again, in a way does make it scarier because I'd never had it before. I had it one time and I was in the emergency room and they almost had to shock paddle me, and I've never had it again. So it's when is it going to happen? Am I going to be driving a towboat into a bridge when it happens next?
It's going to be just like New Madrid.
So yeah, it is scary in that sense, but I will say it did raise my awareness of my own eating habits, drinking habits, sleeping habits, all those things that put strain on your heart.
Mortality.
So yeah, I guess I would say, as this is I don't know exact ages, but I'm comfortable throwing out I'm starting to feel more middle-aged. So yeah, get your heart checked out, listeners. It's very important to take care of that thing. The old ticker.
Here, I need to get my charger really quick, and then we can do the waltz portion of the podcast.
Yeah,
It's not going to be too long either.
We're going to be taken over here briefly. Speaking of hijacking here.
Piracy, I suppose.
Did anybody watch the Davy Crockett Walt Disney movie with Mike Fink on there?
Oh, the keel boaters?
Obsessively as
Keel
a child.
boaters. Was he? What did they call that? Like the River Pirates, though?
Because in the Disney version, that's where he meets Mike Fink. It's because he's the leader of these river pirates.
Yeah, great show, great movie.
We did a bonus. One of our first bonuses was about Mike Fink. I think we've unlocked it for everyone since then. But we did one about Mike Fink and kind of the keel boat, flatboat world. That was really interesting to read about that whole culture, pre-modern transportation on the rivers. Some very cool stuff in that episode. But yeah, the Mike Fink folk tales are really, really fascinating.
Yeah,
they use the N-word a lot. But
go Sharp.
I was unemployed for a little bit last summer, and whenever I was hurting for money, I built a French drain at Daniel's house. And
every time you needed money, you did that?
I just did it one. But it was
just kept accumulating.
Well, I mentioned it.
My yard is a disaster.
I don't need any more.
Well, I mentioned it because while I built it, I listened to a Beyond the Breakers series. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. I think it was one with a Russian ship, but also around the same time, the Dollop had put out some Mike Fink episodes, or maybe one. But I listened to those at the same time.
That was fun. I would do more. We enjoyed doing the Mike Fink bonus.
Mm-hmm.
I was more interested in learning about flatboats and keel boats. I liked the stuff where they would put together a flatboat at St. Louis and sail it down to New Orleans and then just take it apart.
That's all we needed.
Put it back together later.
All right, is everyone ready?
I think so.
I promise this won't be long, but we've reached the part of the podcast where we always lie to strangers, an Ozarks history podcast hijacks the end of another podcast, in this case, Beyond the Breakers. We're not going to introduce ourselves because we already did that, and
Some
we might
might
always
be
like to strangers.
offended that I'm sharing a secret. I'll make an exception because I think you'll keep it.
Catchy.
I don't remember the next part. But...
I don't know. I hardly ever listen to the theme song, actually. And I will say, as we might always lie to strangers, but not on places where we're all friends. So I was going to surprise everyone with this, and in my little script here, I said that I got permission from Tanner, but that doesn't matter. You know it. So shortly after, and we can treat this like a waltz episode. So feel free to interrupt me.
Yeah, fuck
Insult
Sean,
him,
you know, cuss.
slap him around a bit.
Well, someone else can feel the pain of editing the tornado that is We Always Lie to Strangers. So shortly after the collapse of the bridge on I-40, Captain William James Clark of the United States Army arrived on the scene in full military uniform with green beret insignia.
Now, I am going to be picturing the William Clark of Lewis and Clark the whole time in his uniform that he would have been wearing.
A very nice, whatever era that would be. I don't know. I lost the thread. 1804. Yeah. What are you eating?
I was eating some nuts. You got some problem with that? I hadn't had a snacky yet. Okay.
Captain
It's been
Clark.
8 hours since I had a little taste of lunch.
I warned that we were going to be, 4 Randy Quaids showing up, 4 Cousin Eddies, and here it comes.
I don't know who Randy Quaid is.
I don't believe that.
The drunk pilot from Independence Day, obviously.
Okay, I know who he is.
Captain Clark told the first responders and state police present at the scene that he was on leave from Afghanistan and had been sent to coordinate and lead the rescue and recovery efforts.
I think Helmand Province is pretty safe right now, so if you want to head back and help out with that bridge, I think they could use you.
The barges are safe here in Kandahar.
I'm picturing like the highest ranking Coast Guard guy being like, something seems off.
Yeah.
How many barge accidents have you heard about from Afghanistan? None, probably. I'm guessing.
But this is the era where we're all going to be very insane about any kind of disaster.
It's not that long after 9/11.
Bug light for every crazy person.
That's what I was thinking about with the South Padre Island one. Like, is obviously I don't remember the news coverage of it, but surely when that happened, everyone had to have been immediately thinking terrorism.
Right. Oh, if I know anything about Weber's Falls, Oklahoma, it's that they think it was a terrorist attack. Captain Clark met with then Governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, and said that he, Captain Clark, had to be present with Keating, or he could not hold, or he, being the governor, couldn't hold press conferences, and also that the collapsed bridge could not be in the background of any press conferences, and also Captain Clark gave interviews himself.
I looked up Frank Keating because he was talking in the news compilation I was watching. I was on his Wikipedia. I'm kind of surprised that Frank Keating was upset by this deadly disaster because it seems like he really liked to kill people because he seems to have the record for executions under his watch as governor of a state.
So he's trying to get a state park named after him.
Yeah.
Oklahoma and Texas is a huge rivalry, right? So, I assume that was the...
His Wikipedia, the intro part of it ends with, Keating oversaw the execution of 52 people under his term as governor, a record unmatched as of 2023. That makes it sound like a good thing. But
did he have a weekly recording of it? Like, was this like his fireside chats? Like,
my God.
Horrifying.
Now, it would be several days before anyone on the scene would begin to question Captain Clark's credentials. People began to discuss Captain Clark's 300-pound body, rather obese for someone claiming to be a Green Beret.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, I don't want to derail this again, but I'm looking at the statistics here. There's a year by year chart for each state with executions. And in 2001, Oklahoma executed 18 people. That's crazy numbers. 11 the previous year, 7 in 2002, 18 in 1 year. Man, Frank.
Yeah, you totally get the waltz vibe. This kind of sounds like the googling mid podcast is kind of a mainstay.
Okay, so anyway, the guy's 300 pounds. That's crazy for a Green Beret.
I like that he can't just he can't do normal stolen valor and be like, yeah, I work in like logistics or something.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I'm a Green Beret.
Yeah, most of the army is logistics.
You could fit so many silver wings upon his chest. So.
This also, we're going to go beyond just this situation, so that's where things are really going to take some turns you're not expecting. Anyway, let's see, where am I?
Just like the barge.
Don't the Green Berets specialize in like force multiplication and like counterinsurgency? Like, why would you need a Green Beret at the bridge?
Well, he was on leave from Afghanistan.
Okay, so he's not operating as a Green Beret at the time.
He was just trying to help out.
He just happens to be a Green Beret. So
I see.
Clark obtained the use of several motel rooms, costing $900 total in Van Buren, Arkansas, and he promised that the rooms would be paid for by the government, as well as getting nearly $500 in supplies from an Army surplus store in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Fort Smith.
Okay, Van Buren not that close to Weber's Falls. Like, definitely
actually,
closer.
Not really, no.
Check this out. I put this into Ohio and Wisconsin measurements for the Beyond the Breakers boys. So
That's one Kenosha away.
Fort Smith and Van Buren. Fort Smith and Van Buren are across the Arkansas River from each other and directly on the border with Oklahoma. Oh, and then he also, in uniform, quote, borrowed a truck for transportation of supplies from a dealership in Searcy, Arkansas.
What?
This was what I got the drive comparison. So that would be like if you were in Ohio, borrowing a truck in Columbus for a disaster in Louisville. And if you were in Wisconsin, borrowing a truck in Milwaukee for a disaster in Indianapolis.
So how big of quotes are we putting on borrowing here?
I mean, he said he just needed to transport things for the disaster. But Searcy, Arkansas is getting into the east side of Arkansas.
It's also like really far from an interstate.
I can imagine this guy using the word commandeer, you know?
Yes. Yes to
Like, it's
Gus
not
and
easy.
Daniel both there.
Searcy's hard to get to.
Searcy is not on I-40.
Searcy's kind of sucks.
Oh, it's
Searcy's
definitely
awful.
sucks.
It's where Harding University is. Harding, anyone with any leadership in Arkansas ever, minus maybe 6 people, are kind of fashy.
It's for optimistic numbers.
I just found it on my map here.
Searcy?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
Just-
is.
just north of Dogwood.
Not to be confused with Dog Patch.
Actually,
McJester? What? McJester? That's not a name.
Searcy is much closer to Forest City than it is to Weber's Fall, Oklahoma.
That's everything you need to know about it.
So, the largest of suspicions against Captain Clark were raised when he began photographing credit cards and personal identification of victims' recovered personal effects.
Oh no!
And began
Damn, dude.
to
Stealing
take
more than valor.
This is Green Beret business.
Yes, and began to take particular interest in a briefcase that had belonged to Andrew Clements, an Army officer who was killed in the accident. Clark told people that he was friends with Clements from military school and began contacting Clements' widow.
Whoa.
This is one of those famous Sharp scripts where the only response you continually have is "Oh no," like just escalating "Oh no's."
Well, I looked through the show notes and went, I don't see one mention of William Clark. Now, and I couldn't.
You look at the notes and it's like a Green Beret was on hand to bravely assist with the rescue and recovery operations.
Hey, you're nice. Good for him.
He totally got me.
So there were a lot of red flags, but I couldn't figure out exactly what happened. But Captain Clark was eventually approached by Weber's Fall Mayor Jewel Horn over his leadership tactics, and Captain Clark fled to Canada, where he was arrested near Toronto and returned to the United States on June 9th, exactly 2 weeks after the bridge collapsed.
Where he claimed he was running away to his girlfriend, who also lived in Canada.
It
2 weeks,
out,
though. That's a wild 2 weeks.
It's a wild 2 weeks.
I hope this is a normal 2 weeks for him, though. Like, this is just...
Buddy,
I'm
we
just
haven't
gonna let
got to the wild stuff.
Well, I'm just gonna let you know.
God,
Best chicken fried steak I've ever had was in Van Buren. So I mean, like, he's living well.
Nice.
Living well.
You mentioned multiple. Did you say motel or hotel rooms?
He rented, I believe, 9 motel rooms in Van Buren.
What? That's
for
half
the first.
capacity.
He said it was for the first responders.
Are we talking like a nice motel, like a Red Roof Inn, or?
I mean, we're talking $100 a night in 2002.
Oh,
so
I wonder if he was getting some of the river whores or whatever from Tulsa.
I do love that at this time, if you were military and had first responders, you could just get away with anything. That people would just be like, "Yep, sounds right."
Yeah, he was like, I need 9 hotel rooms. I need a bunch of stuff from the Army surplus store. I need a truck. And everyone was like, absolutely, thank you for your service.
Thank you for sure.
it's stuff like this where you're like, I see how the Battle of Los Angeles happens, right? Like, where people are just like, yeah, this guy in a green outfit, let's do what he says.
It turns out that William James Clark was a multiple felon from Missouri who just happened to be in the area of the bridge when it was struck by the boat. In an interview, so I couldn't, and I'll get these sources, I can send these sources to you later.
Okay.
But in an interview that I couldn't find, but was referenced in a news article, Clark said that he had stopped at a rest stop because of, quote, a sixth sense that told him a disaster had taken place.
Continuity with the comment on the YouTube.
Yeah, this is the guy who commented on the YouTube.
I thought about that, but I had to wait to mention this. And to his credit, it does appear that he was one of the first people on the scene of the bridge collapse. He claims to have saved 2 women in the immediate aftermath from the river by diving into the river and then being asked to come out because the undercurrent was too strong. And then claims that he was made to leave, at which point, and the reason he jumped in was because there weren't rescue efforts happening. And then he left and then returned in the military uniform.
I kind of want to tell him, sir, you understand why I can't possibly believe you.
Honestly,
this is just what happens to Dermot from Venture Brothers when he grows up, right? Like, it's that kind of guy, the guy that's like, yeah, I know karate, like that guy, just the ultimate evolution of him.
I saved 2 women.
Yeah, right.
I would have saved more, but they made me leave.
They made me leave. Clark did not.
All the government red tape.
Clark did not, in fact, save 2 women and had never been in the military.
Yeah.
The closest he had been was serving in the ROTC in high school.
There it is. There it is.
In another interview, and again,
borrowed valor is what he argued.
In another interview, again, this is not one I could find, but these are quotes from official court records. He said that he, quote, didn't put the uniform on until he was frustrated to the point of being mad because, quote, nothing was being done. And also said he was in trouble because, quote, he made the government look like a fool.
Okay.
He ultimately would plead guilty to felony charges of impersonating a federal officer, theft of a vehicle and hotel rooms, and felony firearm possession. He had purchased a rifle despite being a convicted felon in Oklahoma 2 days before the bridge disaster, and had kept the rifle loaded and in the stolen truck all the way to Canada.
That is some Oklahoma shit, boys.
I'll say that doesn't sound like it would be illegal in Oklahoma at all.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
he
think
was
it
he was
is.
from Missouri and had to drive through Arkansas. They don't care.
I guess I've never heard of stolen hotel rooms as like a specific crime that you can
I know.
commit.
Isn't that funny? I don't know what that means.
Like you accidentally stay past checkout time and you get accidentally charged with like a felony for stealing a
Sir,
hotel
you
room.
don't
Squatters right in a
realize-
hotel room
Yeah.
if you stayed long enough. Like,
You don't realize this is a felony, sir. We need to have a conversation. So Clark served 5 years. Oh, go ahead.
I just looked up a picture of this guy, and just the fact that he sewed his little name onto his his not real army uniform.
What's his name?
Is it in cursive?
William James Clark. I will say, when you were saying 300 pounds, I thought he would look bigger. I think he's a tall dude, but he's still obviously not a Green Beret.
Yeah.
But
so he served 5 years and was released under supervision in 2007. Buckle up, y'all.
Oh no.
You are not ready for this next paragraph. I was not ready for this next paragraph. Only a month after his release, Clark violated his probation. Clark called the Russian embassy and told the security chief at the embassy that he was a member of U.S. Special Forces and that he was involved in an assassination plot against Vladimir Putin.
Wow.
all right, he's upgraded to a Danny McBride character. That's where I'm at now.
For this, he spent another 2 years in prison.
Worth it.
I'm so terrified of
good.
like the epilogue being like, and now he's mayor, like or something. Like,
Oh, what's funny
Yeah,
is there's another guy with his name that was kind of higher up in a city government that embezzled a ton of money in Mississippi. And for a little bit there, I thought it was him, but I have his fate. Well, he's not dead, but
All the people who are calling for Pete Hegseth's removal are apparently unaware that this guy is his second in command.
yeah,
So-
right. He's a real soldier now.
I just don't understand why anyone would defer to him. Because, he's just, at the end of the day, he's just a dude. Even if he was a legitimate Green Beret, why would anyone be like, yeah, no, we need this?
Moments of panic, man.
Yeah, and again, I think it's like I don't know if it was Taylor who said this, but it's like also I guess the time partially of like
Absolutely.
oh yes, of course, like very deferential to the military. I was thinking about that the other day. I remember us going on a trip somewhere pretty soon after 9/11 and being at I don't know, either Midway or O'Hare, and just like being in line to check in, and like literally just like uniformed soldiers holding an assault rifle, and just thinking, and as a little kid, I was thinking like, oh, so this is like what it's going to be like forever, and like not thinking that was weird or a bad thing at the time. But now it's like, oh
Ooh.
my God, what the hell?
Daniel, Ray, and I went to the same high school in rural Arkansas. And
Second best.
this has not come up on our podcast, I believe, but
Oh, God. I know where you're going.
It doesn't sound real, but our school, on Daniel and I's junior year of high school, Ray's senior year of high school, flew a flag over the school that had flown at Abu Ghraib prison.
Like they knew that's where it came from.
Oh, yeah. They
Like,
announced
they
it.
knew.
Announced
They
it over the intercom.
announced it. Because how the hell are we going to know? They announced it literally, and it was one of our two Muslim students who was doing the announcements that day, just out of coincidence. But yeah, we tried to protest it.
Jesus Christ.
This is why I
And
don't feel
the,
too much heat when they say I didn't go to high school with them.
Do you remember though? We made the shirts and we tried. It's high school, and we got invited. Me and unnamed person who's not on the pod were like asked to come speak to the principal, and he's got a copy of Bill O'Reilly and some other right-wing goon, I can't remember, but has their books on his desk, and then is like, what do you boys think is wrong with this? I don't understand what the problem is. Yeah.
Did not take it
Southern
down.
schools at this period in history were not great.
I wrote a
Places
newspaper
to be.
article about the flag and the debate around it, and being a school newspaper, I had to be very neutral about it, and people still tried to get the high school newspaper canceled.
That is a funny like concept to have a debate around. It's a bit in the same sense when people talk about like, the Palestine debate, it's like there's no debate about this. It's like the debate about our prison rape flag that we have flying outside of our high school. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know.
Right.
Their argument was like, no, it didn't fly over it during that part. It wasn't during it was the other times.
But
What's funny about Abu Ghraib is like Abu Ghraib was like a notorious hellhole under Saddam, and it's like no one even knows about that because the United States did so much worse stuff with it. Like, that's insane.
One of the things that makes me feel really old is sometimes I will tell this story to younger people, and they go, "What's Abu Ghraib?" And then I go, "Oh."
We wrote a good punk song about it, though.
I've just got one paragraph. Might as well finish her out. Am I right?
Let's keep talking about Abu Ghraib.
I'm not surprised whenever 9/11 gets brought up in a podcast, but Abu Ghraib, you don't get that every episode.
Not often. It's kind of the B-side.
William Clark was eventually arrested in 2010 outside of a gun show in Juneau, Alaska.
That's exactly where I'd expect him to get arrested, actually. That's like, yep.
It's interesting because Juneau, Alaska, you can only fly into that town.
But you can't fly out?
They don't have roads connecting to the outside.
Oh, I thought you meant like you... I thought you meant like you...
Also, that doesn't sound real. I'm gonna fact check you, Sharp, because that sounds like bullshit.
Well, I think that's actually true. I think boat or fly is your only way.
Yeah. So here's I'm gonna be extremely vulnerable with everyone.
It's a safe place.
I have all of these like fake sports leagues that I play with dice games that I've created, and I had to do a lot of logistics about if the team would be in Juneau or not, because you can't drive there from the mainland or I mean any part of Canada or Alaska. It's only boat or plane, which is interesting because they have a highway. Because I've looked at the maps and the highway just kind of goes and stops.
I think it's a fascinating thing about podcasts that like the biggest podcast lore always happens on a guest spot. Like the most revealing information about ourselves will be on someone else's podcast.
I think it's because like on your own podcast is like, you know, the structure, you know how it works, you know, like when you're going to add something or what you're going to say. Whereas like, yeah, on the guest, it's like, it sort of has you a bit wrong footed and you're like, oh, like I'm going to talk about this instead. I'm going to talk about my high school having the Abu Ghraib prison flag.
Yeah, right.
We'll share our high school story with you when we go on your podcast.
There we go.
Deal.
Very exciting.
Probably shouldn't, but
Names redacted.
But your thing about the dice sports leagues reminds me of in high school when I played Fantasy Congress one year.
Love that.
They like a Yahoo Sports, or no, it wasn't Yahoo. It was through like it was one of those .gov websites, and they had Fantasy Congress, and so you got points for like bills sponsored, bills proposed. You got like news points, so like your Hillary Clintons and stuff were always in the news, so that would get you points. But you also got an attendance score, so like your big profile people are also missing a lot of sessions, so that would lower their overall points. I had one guy, I forget who it was, from Ohio. He died while he was on my team, and so I got a huge boost in news points, but then his attendance bottomed out.
I was about to ask what a death would do.
Yeah. So
man, and imagine an assassination.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff you'd have to kind of hope for. I think it only lasted 1 year.
Yeah,
I can't imagine why.
Did you ever play Nation States?
I think it's because I was the only one playing it. Was maybe the problem.
I do want to point out that while there's not a road to Juneau, you can get to it by ferry, which means technically you can drive to it.
I don't know.
That's splitting hairs.
No,
The
I
cars-
think
you're
if I
turning
can
your car
drive
off.
to it, it's connected.
That's
by
like
a
saying
road.
you can walk to it
Hey.
because you could just stand on the ferry.
Yeah.
The one
No.
ferry in Arkansas is operated by the highway department. There
This
you
is
go.
why our last paragraph is
a
always our
road.
longest.
All right, I'll even restart the one sentence of the paragraph that I said. Clark was eventually arrested in 2010 outside of a gun show in Juneau, Alaska, which is interesting because you can't drive there. A military
Unless you
man,
can drive onto a ferry.
a military man recognized that his military uniform and military credentials were fake, which led to him contacting the FBI. And the FBI realized Clark was wanted for extensive check frauds ranging from Iowa all the way to Alaska.
Busy man.
Yeah, I want to say that he had written, I didn't put it in my little script here, but he had written, I believe, $70,000 worth of hot checks that had affected like 255 people, something like that.
Wow.
And then the last that I saw now, and I wrote this today because I should have been paying more attention, so I kind of busted this out pretty quick. But the last thing that I saw about William Clark was that he was in a jail in Fairbanks, Alaska, waiting for a prison sentence that could be up to 25 years. So there is a good chance that he is in prison and maybe in Alaska.
Should we
Not
go
in
visit him?
office. That's the surprising part.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a good place for him to be.
Not an actual Green Beret now.
So anyway, thanks for letting me do that on the end of the episode.
Yeah, that was an awesome icing on the cake here.
Uh-huh.
I just felt like that.
Right as you
had
said
to
that, an
be
ice cream truck just
shared.
drove by my house. Perfect.
Yeah, so I guess we can wrap things up here then. So I guess I will just say, first of all, thank you all for being able to join us here, being able to work out the logistics. Really enjoyed having you guys on here. I know I need to be wrapping up here, but yeah, thanks again. If you guys could just, I don't know, where can people follow you? Where can people listen to the show? What can people expect if they tune in?
If you liked the end of this episode, you would like our podcast probably, but I think you can get our podcast anywhere you would listen to podcasts. We have an Instagram, we_always_lie_2 strangers. Me, Gus, and Ray all run the Instagram, but I honestly
Generous.
Yeah, really.
yeah. The issue is that sometimes it's hard to find a picture that will work. And I mean, from social media stuff, sometimes you're like, if I know the algorithm is not going to show this picture to people, why even bother writing a post? We have a Blue Sky that we don't use. I don't even know what it's called.
You can find us at We Always Lie to Strangers. That's our podcast. The social media is attached to it as well. But and the Blue Sky will be active. We also just got out of a period of long travel, a marriage, and a few disasters. So we'll be back to updating these things with regularity quite soon.
You just got into a marriage.
Yes.
Out
yes.
of it, okay.
Yeah. Out of a wedding into a marriage.
Yeah. And then, I guess that's it. And then we have an email that is waltzpodcast@gmail.com. You can yell at us about everything you hated. We've actually only gotten positive emails so far, but I'm just waiting.
Yeah.
It's
Fuck
gonna be
the
fun.
trend.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
like I said, thanks for having us on here.
Yeah, thank
And,
you so much.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah,
tons
this is
of
great.
fun.
Very cool.
Glad you
y'all
guys could do it.
Yeah, I think y'all passed the test for being a guest back as well.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Not that you
Um,
had to. Not that you had.
I think
to
you got
try.
cursed with that.
Yeah, we would be very excited. We'd be very excited to hop on your show as well.
I
Hell yeah.
actually have a non-boat idea as well. But,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
Boo.
boats. We talk about boats all the time.
It's a canoe.
So with that, I guess we can sign off here. Thanks again for joining us. We'll get
thank you.
this edited and out as soon as possible.
Have
And
fun editing it.
for those of you out there listening, thank you all for checking out this episode in its full entirety. And we will talk to you again soon.